I'm going to show you all how to sew on bridal buttons in a series. Now I don't have any elastic loops and I didn't want to buy any for just this one video, so I'm just going to use these corset loops that are on this dress I already have, and the scale is just going to be a little off, so just use your imagination a little bit. This is going to be my other side of my placket for whatever I'm working on. So I need to mark where all my buttons are going to go, and it's valuable, I find, to measure things, even if you expect them to be the same. You know, like I would expect these to all be the same width, but I measured them and these are an inch and a quarter. This one's an inch. So it's like everything would have been a quarter of an inch too low, which isn't a disaster, but it saves you in the long run. I, for one, hate doing things twice, so never hurts to just check, even if something is supposed to be a specific way. And regardless of whether or not they are the same size or not, I still want to use the item itself. So I want to, rather than measuring, it starts it off right. So I've butted this up at the top. I'm going to use a pen. Obviously you guys would use chalk or a pencil. This mark isn't going to show, so it's not as much of an emergency, but I'm just going to use a pen so you can see what I'm doing. So you don't want, these aren't elastic, but even if they were, you don't want to be having to pull the elastic really far across to get the loop around your button. So you really just kind of want to put tension enough on it so that it's not just loose, but don't actually really stretch it. You know, just I'm kind of pressing this a little bit. So I can mark that. And then I can take my ruler and measure that and see that that's a quarter of an inch. It's maybe a little bit shy, but I'm just gonna go with a quarter of an inch because that's gonna be easy to demonstrate. So now I have that. I now know, because I measured, that all of these are an inch and a quarter apart. So it's a quarter of an inch in, they're an inch and a quarter apart. So I can take my ruler, line it up. I love clear rulers, so you can really see what you're doing. So I'm going to line this up with the inch mark at the dot that I have, the edge of my material at a quarter of an inch, or whatever you discern is accurate, and I'm going to measure a quarter of an inch down from there, another quarter of an inch down from there, so that's 3 1/4. Another inch and a quarter down from there, making sure that I'm still keeping this quarter of an inch space accurately. Now, again, going back and checking your measurements, you will never regret it. So, because I was, just holding the ruler, so that's, yep, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, perfect. So now I know the placement. There are, I'm confident y'all have seen them, there are those little, oh, look at me, I'm not even measuring at an inch and a quarter, I was measuring at the yellow line, which, oh no, that is a quarter. Alright, just ignore me. Just full of nonsense. So all my points moved in just a touch because of the ruler being there, so just adjusted that one slightly. So there are measurement tools that you can use to establish an exact amount of different space. I don't know what they're called, probably something like button measure tools or something, but it's easy enough to do it this way, so no worries. So you just start sewing on your buttons. Sew a button on the way you normally would. shank button, which is generally what you'll use for this. Can't think of a reason why you wouldn't, but you know, sometimes brides have specific, particular requests. I'm just going to do a few stitches on this. I would normally do like 4 or 5. I've doubled my thread, like I've shown you guys a bunch of times, and I would normally do 4 or 5 stitches here, but I'm just going to do 3 to give you guys an idea about it without making you just watch me sew on buttons all day. Okay, so we'll pretend that's 4 or 5 stitches. So now, oh, come on. Why? Do, do, do. Okay. Now, button on. Maybe not as well as I would like. So now I've got my knot in the back. Here's my button. Here's the back of my garment. I'm going to jump down to the next hole, but I don't want to just jump down without tying off. I don't want to tie off and cut because that's just a bunch of extra. It goes faster, especially because, you know, these are pretty far apart given what they'll usually be like. Oof, I just muffed that up. So you want to tie off, but don't cut, and then just move down to the next point where you know that you need a button. Don't pull this tight, because you'll make a weird loop. You know, usually they're going to be so close together that it's just going to be a little wee bit of thread right there. But again, it's not a bad idea to anchor yourself, thread up, so now it's not going to pull on you, and that stabilizes the new button as well. You know, you want to do this because it saves time to just put them on in a series rather than oh, my thread is not my friend today, rather than doing them each individually. But you don't want to get into a situation where one button comes off and then all the buttons come off. So if you don't anchor and then tie off each button, you end up with like an annoying button shedding situation. You know, so if one of the sales staff is in a fitting and a button pops off, like that's not an emergency, but if she's trying to do the fitting, one button pops off and then all the buttons start falling off, that makes her fitting hard, and then also makes it look like our dresses are not well made. And they are well made and well altered. So that's 2 buttons. Do the same thing. Bring it down to the 3rd hole. Make the tension appropriate in the back. Back through to anchor it. Up again. And then I would just continue with that all the way down to the base. You know, I didn't mention, but you do want to, it is a good idea after you mark your button locations to go ahead and check it against the loops to make sure it's actually lining up correctly. If it starts wandering, you know, if you've measured a little inaccurately and it starts to wander so that these are getting lower and lower rather than staying consistently where they're supposed to be, it's nice to know that ahead of time rather than once you've put all the buttons on. Because, you know, especially if you do it this way where you've got this nice anchor tie off, it's going to be annoying to get them back off again. So measure, 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 and then just anchor and tie off each button so that it's faster done in series. You know, it just saves time to not have to cut and re-knot every single button, and it also looks tidier on the back, you know, rather than having a bunch of tails sticking out of the back of each button. You just have this tidy row of knots and threads, much shorter, generally speaking. So I hope that's clear. Again, always do let me know if anyone watches this and cannot follow. but I think it's pretty, you guys probably already all know how to do this, but ta-da, buttons in series.